So I get many comments from people saying, oh, sales in Germany have collapsed, sales in Australia have just hit an all-time record low, sales in Norway, they've slowed down. And you have to look into what's actually going on in the background. So, hi, I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. Today we're just going to have a look at some of the background to why these sales figures vary so much. Now, the first thing to know is that in most countries, there is some form of subsidy towards having an EV. There isn't in the UK. People often say, oh, no, you get your free road tax. No, that's actually for every vehicle which has a lower than specified exhaust emission output. So there are some petrol cars, ultra efficient engines that also get zero road tax. They're out there on the road. So this is not an exclusive right for EVs. This is just EVs produce zero, so will automatically fall into the lowest category. So in the UK, we don't get anything. When it comes to leasing, that's another matter. When it comes to benefit in kind for salary sacrifice, that's another matter. But if you or I, as a member of the public, just go into a showroom or go online and want to order a car, an EV, we get nothing. But in some countries, you get an awful lot. In France, they're doing a huge amount for the less well-off. In essence, the poorer you are, the cheaper it is for you to get a car. And they have a scheme at the moment, which is no deposit, €100 a month. And you can get yourself a brand new EV. These are amazing deals. So those are around there. Norway, for example, they had normally, because they don't have a motor industry as such, not a mass-produced one anyhow, all cars coming in are imported, and they all carry a maximum, I think it's about 25% import tariff. And electric cars, EVs, are exempt from that. So over there they have that. Germany, there were subsidies until recently. America has its Inflation Reduction Act. Different countries have different schemes and subsidies and tax breaks and everything else, and they're all around the world. And governments will apply them in some cases if they want to boost sales, and they withdraw them if the sales get to a certain point. And so what we see around the world is countries just reaching the point. And the point is that the subsidies were brought in to encourage the sale and the adoption of EV cars. But once it's done that, there's no point offering a subsidy. If you look at Norway, over 90% of all new cars sold every year are EVs, and over 50% of the cars on the road are now EVs as well. There's still a lot of petrol ones, older ones driving around, and they will be for quite a few years to come. But in Norway, it's reached a point where pretty much everyone who's going to have an EV has got an EV, and everyone wants one, and so subsidies become of secondary nature. In France, they found there was so much take-up on their subsidy for the less well-off that they had to put a cap on it and stop it. Now, when these subsidies come to an end, then the sales just plummet. And this is perfectly logical. If you go into a TV store, for example, and you look at a TV and one day it's in there, it's £1,000, you go back 2 days later and it's at £1,500, you're going to go, whoa, I'll wait till it comes down again. And so what we see is quite a rapid change in different countries. And one country might suddenly impose a new tariff, a new subsidy, and try and encourage people to buy EVs. And in another country, they'll withdraw it. So you see sales going up and down all over the place. And there doesn't seem to be any logic to it. Also, you'll find that once you get up to about 50, 60, 70% penetration, the sales slow down. If you're going to buy an electric car, you've probably already bought one. If you're not going to buy one, you never will, no matter what subsidy is available. So the growth rate slows down. This is what they call the S-curve. It takes a while to ramp up, then it goes vertical, and then it tapers off towards the end. And all those who hate EVs, who want EVs banned, they're just out there saying, oh, have you had a look at Holland? Holland, their sales have crashed in April. And you think, yeah, but have you looked why? maybe it's because the subsidy that was available in March has been withdrawn. So when you look at figures, you have to be a little bit careful about, about it. And EVs at the moment have reached a point where they actually no longer need subsidies. If all the subsidies for all the EVs all around the world actually stopped, then an awful lot of countries would just carry on at a lower level. And then as time goes by and they realise that no new subsidies going to come along, people with petrol cars, or diesel cars, or hybrid cars would begin to say, well, yeah, no subsidies, I'll just buy a full battery one next time, or I'll go for another hybrid. And you just let the market settle down. So the subsidies are short term, they're designed to boost the market or encourage whatever the government wants to achieve. And the driving force behind all of this is actually climate change. And I know there's a load of people out there don't think there's any problem, don't know why we're doing it. I think 2050, Nigel Farage is a classic example. Doesn't think 2050 for net zero is a target worth going for. But whatever you think, whatever your personal beliefs are, governments around the world disagree with you. They know that there's something going on, and they have all committed, every country in the world has committed to reducing the amount of pollution, the amount of CO2 and the reliance on fossil fuels, so that by 2050 all countries are targeted to reach zero. Now, not all will, but many will. And it's a good starting point. And if half or 3/4 of the world's countries all reach a net zero, then first of all, they've achieved the objective, which is we're cutting down this disgusting and poisonous and deadly pollution that come out of the exhaust pipe of petrol, diesel and hybrid cars. We can't live with that any longer. Whether you think the planet's suffering or not, I talked to a consultant who is lung and chest disease, and he confirmed everything that's in the headlines, that we are actually killing ourselves. That coming out of the exhaust pipe are pollutants. These are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, there are chemicals, there are carcinogenics, there's all sorts coming out. And for any doubters out there, I would ask you, and don't ever do this, but if you were to run your engine in the car in an enclosed space, you would not live very long. And you know it, you can't deny that. The only reason you're happy to drive around the outside world, not in an enclosed space, is because nature's very kind, it wafts away those poisonous, carcinogenic and toxic fumes. At some point, if we pump enough of those into the atmosphere will not be able to whisk them away, and we will just make our whole atmosphere deadly. So that's what the governments have agreed. And whether you agree or not, it doesn't matter, because we appoint governments and the governments make our policy for us. If you don't like it, maybe in this case to vote for Nigel Farage, but you know, it's something that every country around the world has done. So that's why we're doing it. And what you will find is that once adoption of EVs reaches a certain point, tipping point, then those subsidies will start reducing and eventually they'll be removed. And when they're reduced or removed, the sales will go down. Over time, they will recover and people will say, actually, yeah, with the price of EVs coming down, they're still worth buying, even without subsidies. It's a bit like, as I say, go and have a look at a TV and they've got a one-day sale. It's great if you can do it on that with a big discount, but most of us actually go along outside of that period and just buy whatever's there. The same will happen with EVs. Most countries now have actually reached that tipping point. EVs are here to stay. They may not grow as fast in the future. I don't think they will, unless what I'm predicting is that later this year, particularly in the UK and Europe, we're going to get a mass of really cheap cars coming in. These are things like the Hyundai Ioniq 2, the BYD Dolphin, the Tesla Model 2, the Dacia Spring. There's a load of stuff coming into the country, and it's all going to be £20,000 round about that sort of figure. And there's some big names as well, like the Citroen EC3 and like the Renault 5 E5. And those will be very popular cars. And we're going to see when they start coming into the market at between £20,000 and £25,000, that is where the bulk of the car sales, particularly in the UK, takes place, the new car sales. If you look at the top 10 cars sold in the UK, it's things like the Ford Fiesta, the Ford Focus, the Vauxhall Corsa, the Toyota Corolla, and it goes up into things like Volkswagen Polo, Volkswagen Golf, and the dearest in the top 10 at the moment is something like the Qashqai, which is about £29,000. These are all below £30,000, some of them below £20,000. And yet the cheapest EV you can buy, ignoring the MG4, is well above 35,000, probably nearer 40,000. Some exceptions like the Kona, but most EVs are £40,000 plus. So later this year, once the cheaper cars come in, there'll be no need for subsidies. So any country out there that's still getting subsidies, you know, look after them at the moment, because they're not going to be there for long. When you can go into a showroom and you can find a Vauxhall Corsa for £17,000 petrol and a Vauxhall e-Corsa for £17,000 EV, you don't need subsidies anymore. You've got price parity. That's what's happening with the Citroen EC3 and the Renault 5. They're coming in at that 20. The Citroen is £20,000. The Renault 5 is 25, coming in. And the days of cars coming in, like Ford with the Explorer at £40,000, yeah, doomed to failure. There's none of that market left. In that market, 30, 35, £40,000 plus, everyone's got one that's having one. What's keeping the market going is leases, because if you take out a lease for 2 or 3 years, at the end of that, you hand your car back and you've got no car. So 90% of people just go out and lease another one. And if they like the car they've had, whatever it was, they'll normally lease another one. If they didn't like it or there were any shortcomings, they'd lease something different. So what we're going to see is the leases are going to just keep the sales bubbling through. The mad rush for the EVs, the Model 3s, the Model Ys and equivalent, that's over. It's settled down to a steady level. And we're just waiting now for later this year. It's going to be August, September, October. And then these £20,000, £25,000 plus cars are going to be coming on. And the sales will just take off once again. So that's just a look around at the wild pricing that you see and why some countries suddenly crash and suddenly boom. It's just all down to subsidies. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Dave.